Would you believe if I tell you that you need only 5 set of tools just to get started with Photoshop as a designer? Actually, it's true. Most of the time, we designers use only 5% of the tools which is there out in Photoshop. Photoshop is an overwhelming software with so much potential, but as a designer, you would only need few tools to get started, and most of the time we use these tools 99% of the times. So to make it very easy and to make it very effective for you as a beginner, I challenged myself to create an easiest possible, the shortest possible tutorial on Photoshop for beginners. So let's start. So when you click on the Photoshop icon, Photoshop will look something like this. Now I am using Adobe Photoshop CC 2018 version, but don't worry, most of the Photoshop, they work just in the similar fashion. So the process is gonna be more or less the same. So now like most of the other software, when you have to open a new file, you have to click on the file and then click on the new. It will open a document window. Now here, don't get overwhelmed by the information which is given over here. You just have to click on what kind of width and height of the slide you want to have, and just put the resolution of 144 dpi. It works just fine for most of the purposes, so this should be fine. You can just click on the create, and this is how the basic Photoshop will look like. Now before starting, I'll just give you an overview. So all the tools have been placed at the left side. On the top you have different options which will be varied based on the tools which you have been selected. On the right side top corner you have color palette where you can select different colors. At the right bottom you have the layer tab. This is very important tab, and we'll be using this very frequently. This will go in detail in a minute. With that, there are some basic handling commands which you should be knowing, which are very similar to all other softwares. So I'll just put this list in the description so it will be easier for you to access. Having said that, we can just start with 5 basic tools that every designer needs for getting started. So for that, I have just created one more file, so I'll open that. Just below the new tab, you have open option. So the first tool which we're going to learn is layers. Now in layers, as I previously mentioned, it is placed at this right bottom corner over here. Now in layers, you can, as the name suggests, layers are basically there to organize your data. So basically different stages of the sketches, you can save it in different layers, and you can use it, access it whenever you want. So it becomes very handy and convenient for for sketching. So here you can create new layer, you can group different layers according to your purpose. Also you can delete them. So these are very common, intuitive, mostly used kind of commands, so you'll get familiar very quickly. So as you can see, I have already created several groups of different layers. Over here there is this small square on which when you click on that, it will just unhide the data which is there in that particular layer. So just for the reference and discussion point, I have put one of my very rough doodles over here. So now let's say if we have selected this particular layer, and at the top you can see you can adjust opacity of the sketch, and on the left side of the opacity you will see there's normal written, and there is this drop down menu, and you can select the property of that particular layer. This will decide how this layer is going to interact with the other layers which are below that layer. For example, in this sketch, these are the body panels, and if you want to put some color over here, and let's say this is that layer, and in normal situation this layer is something like this, but you want this layer to interact or get multiplied with the sketch underneath that. So you can just click on this, and there are so many options. So there is one option called as multiply. So when you click on that, it will directly get multiplied with the layer below that, and it will give this kind of effect. Now similar to multiply, there are several things like lighten, screening, and every time it's gonna give a different result. So based on the requirement of your sketch and the render, you can decide which option to select for that. Right now we can keep it to multiply because that is what we want, and that's all. So that is what you have to know for layers, which is you are good to go. Now the second important tool is brush and eraser. Now brush and eraser, obviously they are two different tools, and there is a reason that why I have put them in the same single category, because they function exactly similar way. So for the brush tool, if you look at the tool shelf over here, there are a couple of brush like icons, out of which The simplest looking brush icon is basically brush tool, and as it says, the shortcut for brush tool is B. It's very easy to understand, very logical also. So you can just select that. You can go to the particular layer, you can create new layer, and here you can see that whatever the color you have selected, you can just start sketching it and it will show the result over here. Now here you can see this another brush icon at the top side. Now this icon, and there is one more icon over here. Basically these two do the same job, so you can select any one of them, and then inside here ignore most of the information which is given over here, but basically you can select different brushes from this palette. There are ready-made brushes. You can also create brushes which you can explore later. And the interesting thing is here you can adjust different characteristic of this brush. For example, you can adjust the size of that brush. You can select the hardness, that do you want to keep that brush hard or soft like this, and also the brush stroke, you can decide the spacing of it. So for example, if you want some kind of a dotted line, you can have this kind of a effect, and you can play around with this. You can also adjust the tip of the brush. You can make it flat, you can rotate the orientation, you can get different kind of brush feeling to this. Now moving to the eraser tool. Eraser tool is very similar to brush tool, just the icon is different. So this is eraser like looking icon over here. Just click on that, and as you can see, this will erase that. And similar to brush settings, you can just click on this icon, and then you can adjust all the different characteristic of that particular brush like this, right? So that's why they have been selected or created as the same category. Moving to the third very important tool is related to selection. Now under selection you have three various options which you can use for different purposes for selection. So let's select this one. Again, coming back to the same sketch. Now again going to the left side of your tool shelf basically. Now here you can see this rectangular option over here, and it says rectangular marquee tool. It's basically selection tool. When you long press on it, you get the option of elliptical selection also. Now it's very intuitive and simple, that whatever, if you just click and drag it, it can give you that particular selection, and you can use this selection to adjust the data, select the data, copy the data, etc, etc. And to deselect this selection, you can just right click on this and deselect it. There's a shortcut Ctrl D or Command D for this same thing. When we import some of the sketches, we always require to select some of the areas in a very particular shape. So for that you have another selection tool called as Lasso tool. Now in this Lasso tool, again when you long press, you have two options. One is Lasso tool, which is free hand, so you can just, based on your hand movement, you can select particular area. Whereas if you want to select very particular area of the sketch, then there is polygonal tool, which is you just have to click on different areas. Once you complete, you will get this particular selection, as you can see, and then you can use it to create different patches of colors. For example, you can just put this color, you can select brush tool, you can select a different brush, fill that area, and then you are good to go. You can then put again that multiply command, and then you are good to go. To make it very convenient for you, there's another automated tool which is called as magic wand tool. So what it does is, it automatically, the AI decides what kind of a enclosed area is there. For example, just to make it more clear, so this is that shape, and if you click inside of this triangle, it will automatically select this shape. So these are selection tools. Now coming to the fourth one, this is very interesting. It is transform tool. So already we discussed that how we can select particular shape and size of the sketch. Now once you have selected this particular area, you are in that layer again. Because when you click right on this, you will see this free transform tool, which will give you the freedom to adjust this sketch. Let's say this sketch, you want to make it more horizontal, you want to make it more tall, all those adjustment you can do it. Ctrl Z. So, and then on top of this transform tool, there are a couple of more options with the transform. You can just right click on this, and you can see that if you want to scale, if you want to rotate, if you want to skew, if you want to distort, warp it, or adjust the perspective. For example, if you click on perspective, and if you want to just drag it, so it is basically adjusting the perspective of that sketch. So this is super interesting and super useful when you are sketching, adjusting. Not all the sketches will be in the right proportion, right perspective. So this transform tool becomes very handy to do little bit of adjustment in your sketches. Coming to the final tools, this is very interesting, levels. So most of the time designers, we have our hand sketches, right? So in that, our scanned copy or the photographs will look something like this. It is going to capture the background, that very fuzzy kind of background. You want to have very clean kind of an image. Now levels will help you in that area. So for levels, you have shortcut Command L or Ctrl L. The levels command will open something like this. Over here you can adjust the shadows, the middle tones, the highlights like this. This is very handy. Once you do little bit adjustment here and there, you'll get the hang of it, and then it is very easier to handle. Now obviously you can adjust the levels manually. Photoshop has created one separate command or tool just to adjust this automatically. So when you have a lot of sketches, you don't have to every time go and adjust the levels. So again, when we press Command L or Ctrl L, you can see 3 eyedroppers over here. Out of that, the last eyedropper, you can select that, and you can just tap on the area which you want to get a very clean kind of a background, which will match with the background over there, which is white. And then just click on this. Automatically Photoshop will calculate the levels for you, and it will give you a very clean looking image like this. Now of course you can revisit these levels and you can adjust it further if you want to have, but then it gets very easy and very quick for you. So guys, these are the 5 category of tools precisely to get you started as a designer, and just keep exploring, and I am sure within few days you'll get the hang of it. I hope this will help. This will get you started with Photoshop journey. Yeah, having said that, let's conclude this video. If you have liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And this channel is all about design awareness. So if you are one of the aspiring students or one of the designers from this awesome community, you can consider subscribing to the channel. Bye bye.